Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar. My name is Jeff, and today's topic is taxes in retirement. So first, let's get a few disclaimers out of the way. I am a retirement specialist, a financial advisor. I am not a CPA or an enrolled agent or attorney. So the contents of today's presentation are based solely off the things I see and have seen over my career. None of this should be taken as specific advice for your situation. So I want to start off by telling a story. I grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. My father worked at the Bethlehem Steel Company right out of high school into the steel company. My father was an electrician, and he had a rough job though. He worked on the cranes and the steel pits, etc. So he was lit on fire, he's breathing in all that junk over the steel pits. So he always drilled it into my head that I was not going to do what he did. He wanted me to go to college and be a teacher like my mother. So me being the good son that I was, that's what I did. So I went to college and I saw a golden opportunity to procrastinate. So I put off all of what I thought were the hard courses, microeconomics, macroeconomics, business administration, etc., until my senior year. And then lo and behold, that time came and I had to take those courses. And I fell in love with them and I aced every single one I took. To the point where my professors came up to me one day and they said, well, what's your major? And I said, it's education. And then they asked me, well, what year are you? And I said, I'm about to graduate. And they said, that's a shame. And I laughed and I said, why is that? And they said, well, not too many kids come through this program and get exempt from the finals. We were going to talk to you about switching majors. And I laughed again and I said, well, thank you, but no thank you. I'm about to graduate. And so on semester break that year, I'll never forget it. I came in the house one day, went home, and found my father at the kitchen table just in tears, just completely devastated. And I asked him what was wrong, and he showed me this letter he had received from the Bethlehem Steel. Bethlehem Steel went bankrupt, the company was sold, and as a result, his pension was cut in half. To say he was devastated would be an understatement. He worked there 35 years, literally blood, sweat, and tears, and all he had to show for it was half of what he thought. But he's doing okay now, so I always have to forget to say that. But, that's the reason I'm here today. So I'll never forget that day. That's when the light bulb went off in my mind. I do want to educate. I just wanted to do it in the field that I fell in love with. So I graduated and got a full-time job and worked at night, studied and got all of my licenses. And so here I am, 20-some years later with an opportunity to educate you and all of my clients. So I'm forever grateful. So thank you again for attending. That's why I'm here, and that's why we're here today. Is unfortunately, there's so many stories just like my father's. I've seen so many over the years. It's a shame. But the reality is you only get one chance to retire. And mistakes can cost you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Furthermore, there's very little time to recover if a mistake is made. So again, our goal and tonight's goal is that you can learn from others' mistakes, because the name of the game in retirement is to keep what you've accumulated. So I'm a picture person. So I like to keep things simple. So retirement really consists of two phases. There's the accumulation phase, work, save, invest, and then there's the distribution phase. Now the distribution phase is supposed to be, the time in your life when you're relaxing and not worrying about anything. But from a financial perspective, it's actually one of the most complicated. There are so many things that you have to face and deal with and consider in retirement. It's much more complicated. Also, you see some of the items listed on your screen. The reality is that all of these issues listed, Social Security, stock market investment, healthcare, longevity, taxes, inflation, Medicare, estate planning, you name it, they're all interconnected. If you think of a pizza, they're each a different slice of the same pie. Right? And so that's the best analogy I could use, is that pizza and this mountain. So another story, when I first started dating my wife, my in-laws were big time skiers. So they took me skiing. And I'll never forget one of the first times going, I thought it was a race. So, straight down the mountain, fell, knocked people over. I was that guy. So my father-in-law took me aside and he said, listen, the first step is you have to learn how to brake. And the second step is you have to learn how to steer. And with the two of them, you can get down the mountain safely and not kill somebody. And so, that's really the best analogy that I can share with you as to what the distribution phase of retirement is. Unfortunately, most advisors and most of the business, because it's what we're taught, is the left side of the mountain. Work, accumulate, save, and invest. But very few people are prepared for the other side, which is the distribution. How to make the right Social Security decision, how to couch and be careful with stock market volatility. What are you going to do about taxes, longevity, healthcare risks, inflation, obviously rising. So these are all the challenges that most people are concerned about with retirement. But the name of the game is to protect and keep what you've accumulated. Obviously, we still want to grow our assets in the distribution phase, but it's far more important to keep, protect, and preserve them. Okay? And that's our focus as retirement specialists. It's to build custom, personalized retirement plans to safely get down the mountain. So who we are. We are Thrive Financial Services. We are independent retirement planning fiduciaries. I like to say we're experienced in all of the issues that affect retirees. Like I mentioned earlier, that pizza analogy. Unfortunately, so many people and other professionals are focused on just investments. But the reality is it's a much bigger picture. So taxes, investments, etc. And our commitment is to give back to our communities through education. And we've been doing seminars and in-person workshops for many, many years. And so again, we're honored that you're here tonight. Hopefully we can help you. We do this through the Society of Financial Awareness, SOFA. We are the chapter president. So today is all about education. I want you to sit back, relax. There's nothing to buy here. This is all education. You're going to see several real life case studies, examples. Everything you're going to see tonight is real life case studies. My goal is that you walk away learning at least one thing that maybe you didn't know before. Our only offer here tonight is our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review. It's a complimentary consultation. It consists of two steps. One is a discovery meeting. As fiduciaries, we're obligated to act in people's best interest, so we need to collect some information. That's step one. Step two is everything that you're going to see here tonight is all a part of our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review, all of the case studies, the reports, etc. So if at any point, any topic you find interesting, etc., feel free to click on that link to register for that consultation. So the first topic we're going to talk about is Social Security. Now I know you're at a taxes workshop, so you're all thinking, why are we talking about Social Security? Well, Social Security has a tax component and a big one, and I'll explain that in a minute. But there's four main benefits that you can get from Social Security that you really can't get anywhere else. So Social Security provides a cost of living adjustment. It's a minor raise every year potentially. Most pensions don't have raises, so this is important. Two, the surviving spouse keeps the greater of the two benefits, God forbid one of you pass away. That's important from a planning perspective. Some people don't know that that's how it works. Number three is a big one. Social Security grows at a rate of 8% per year, each year it's deferred. So once you reach your full retirement age, if you defer it, it increases at an 8% growth rate. Now, I don't know about you, but there's no investment that's legal and it's going to give a guaranteed 8% a year nowadays. So that's big. And last and probably the most important, in my opinion, is how Social Security is taxed. It's a very complicated formula. I'll explain it briefly in a minute. But the bottom line is Social Security is taxed better than any other income you're ever going to receive. So I'll explain that a little bit further. The challenge, though, is that most people don't collect Social Security at the right time because they don't understand all those benefits. In fact, Forbes did a survey a few years ago, actually 2019, and they estimated that only 4% of retirees claim Social Security at an optimal time, leaving $3.4 trillion on the table. If you look at that as a household level, the average household misses out on an average of $111,000. Now, I don't know about you all attending this tonight, but I'm pretty sure everybody on here could probably use an extra $111,000, right? So it's important to understand these benefits so that you can maximize your decision. Okay, so part one of, or step one in our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review is we're going to run a Social Security analysis for you. And there's over 500 some combinations that you can, elect Social Security, different dates, etc. But this software will boil them down to the top strategies. Now, this software lives in a vacuum. It doesn't know your health. It doesn't know your assets. It doesn't know your income sources. But it's a good starting point to start helping people think of Social Security as an asset and not a cash flow. Too many people and too many advisors tell too many clients to start it based off of cash flow needs and cash flow needs alone. Because of those other benefits, we want to look at how can we squeeze as much out of Social Security and provide the biggest lifetime benefit. Okay, so on this screen, Bill and Peggy, they had a couple of options: collect it early or have Bill delay it. And you can see the difference in those numbers. Luckily, Bill and Peggy had assets, so they could afford to do this. But an extra $321,000 back in their retirement, it's a pretty big deal. Okay, so if this interests you, again, it's part one of our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review. We will run this analysis for you, and we'll put it into perspective as to how it relates to you personally. The taxation. Social Security is, again, not taxed like anything else you're ever going to receive. And people always ask me, well, how much is it going to be taxed? Well, the answer is it depends. It depends on other income sources. So it can be taxed anywhere from zero. If you had no income other than Social Security, most of it will be tax-free. If you have other income coming in, it can be taxed anywhere from 0 to 85%. It just depends on the different income buckets that it's coming from and the amount. So here's a case study to illustrate that point. Here's a couple who have, both of them have $72,000 coming in. The couple on the left, they started Social Security early, okay? And the rest of their income had to come from their IRA, whereas the couple on the right started Social Security, they delayed it, and they started supplementing from their IRAs for $20,000. So again, $72,000, both incomes. Couple on the left here, because of that funky formula of the $20,000 coming in of the 72, 17 of it was taxable. Okay, that's how much went on the tax return as taxable. The rest of their income came from their IRA, so all of that is taxable income. So on the tax return, they had $69,000 of taxable income. Okay, at this time, their standard deduction was $27,800 as a married couple. That's what they get to write off. So their taxable income was $41,200. They owed a check to the IRS for $45.46. Okay. Couple on the right, however, they delayed Social Security. And when they began it, of the 52 coming from Social Security, only 7,700 of it was taxable. And again, most of you are thinking, how's that possible? It's that complicated formula, provisional income, that I mentioned earlier. The rest of their 72,000 came from their IRA, 20,000. Again, just like this example, all of that is taxable on the tax return. So their total taxable income was $27,700. They have the same standard deduction as the previous couple, $27,800. So their net taxable income was negative $100. So they owed no money to the IRS. Now, this is an important case study because it shows you the importance of long-term tax efficiency. That is one of our goals for every client that we work with. Long-term tax efficiency. What can we do to position you to pay as little in taxes as possible? And unfortunately, like I said earlier, most people and most advisors tell their clients to start Social Security too early. And what it does is it puts more pressure on your investment assets, retirement assets, long-term, because more money gets taxed. Okay. So again, if this intrigues you, this is all part of our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review. We'll do this analysis for you. All right, now we'll get into the nitty-gritty with taxes. So when we do these workshops in person, I always ask this question. I said, let's take a poll. Raise your hand if you think taxes are going down. Nobody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you think taxes are going up. Every time, almost 100% of the room raises their hand. So there's only a couple ways that money can be taxed. It's these 4 buckets. The first of which is the taxable bucket. We work, we save money, we have to pay taxes. Okay, that's this bucket. Investment accounts that are not retirement accounts, money in the bank, all of that is taxed. It's a very hard way to grow money because of the constant erosion of taxes. The next bucket is where most of the wealth that we see lives. This is retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, etc. Any money that's in this bucket has not been taxed. If you're working, you save money into a 401k, it's not taxed. It's only taxed when you withdraw it. Okay, so it grows tax deferred. We're going to skip this bucket for tonight. And the last bucket is the tax-free bucket. This is money that you have already paid taxes on, and whatever you put in this bucket grows tax deferred, just like this bucket, except when you withdraw it, it's all tax-free. Okay, so we're going to refer back to these buckets in a little bit, but I want to lay the groundwork. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, money can only be taxed in one of these 4 ways. So RMDs, required minimum distributions. If you have an IRA, a 401k, any retirement account, now, once you turn, the law just changed, once you turn 72, you have to take an RMD. Okay, the M means you're required to withdraw a minimum amount. It's about 4%, a little less. It starts at that at 72, and it goes up every year. And I'll explain this in a little bit more. And the deadline to withdraw the RMD is December 31st, and the penalty for missing the withdrawal is 50% of the amount not withdrawn. So it's a pretty big penalty. So you do not want to miss an RMD. Okay. Here are some important RMD dates. Last 2 years ago, the Secure Act passed, and it dramatically changed the way we start and stop collecting RMDs. So right now, the rules are December 31st. That's the deadline to withdraw any RMD. And if you do not withdraw it, it's a 50% penalty. Then you can see some of the other important notes. As I said earlier, when you start an RMD, when you start taking RMDs, they start at 4% and they go up. And again, this is an old graph. It's now 72. It used to be 70.5, but that rule has changed. Excuse me. That rule changed because of the Secure Act. Okay, 2019, this was passed into effect. And basically, it made a lot of changes, but this is the biggest. Okay. Some people have heard of a stretch IRA. So if you inherit any money from a retirement account, an inherited IRA, 401k, SEP IRA, simple IRA, etc., before this law changed, you had your whole life to spread that distribution out. You still were required to take money out, but the amount was very minimal because it was spread over your lifetime. Okay, and so when the Secure Act passed in 2019, it changed all of that. And it's a game changer for anybody who's concerned about, leaving money to their children. Now the law requires anybody who inherits an IRA retirement account to start those distributions as soon as possible and to for all of those distributions to occur in a 10-year period, no longer their whole life. All of that money has to come out and get taxed out of those retirement accounts in just 10 years. So there's some ways around this, but everybody who has retirement accounts, it's a game changer. So it's important to learn the impact and what you can do about it. I always ask people, where do you want your money to go? And nobody ever says the IRS, right? We want to go to our family, our charity, etc. But the Secure Act has dramatically changed that. So if you're interested in learning more about that for you, again, feel free to take advantage of our Thrive Retirement Roadmap review. So back to the buckets, okay? So I explained the 4 buckets. We're going to dive deep on this bucket, the tax deferred. Again, when I meet people, most of their wealth is in this bucket. Okay, whenever I do these workshops in person, I always ask this question. Who's heard this before? When you're working, save money into retirement plan. Don't pay the taxes today. Defer them. Allow the funds to grow. When you retire, because when you retire, you'll be in a lower what? And everybody shouts out tax bracket. But the question is, how many people think that's true? I will tell you right now, for most of the people that I meet, it's not true. Okay. So here's another case study, and this is step 2 in our Thrive Retirement Roadmap review. Remember the mountain? I said how important it is to look ahead. Well, that's what we do for our clients. Is step 2 of our Thrive Retirement Roadmap review is we do a future tax analysis. We know how much you're making when you're working. Well, we want to know how much you're going to make when you're retired, and that's not too hard to figure out. So here's a case study where the combined income for this couple while working was $162,000. They had a salary, the wife's salary, some interest and dividends. Couple on the right, when they retired, because of that great Social Securities that they both had, and a pension was $124. Okay, not that much different. So if you look at the tax return at the time, their income while working at $162 put them right smack in the middle of the 22% marginal bracket. Their income when they're retired is $124,000. Guess where that lives? Also in the 22% bracket. So maybe now the wheels will start turning. Let me think about that again. Work, save, put money in a retirement account. Don't pay the taxes today, because when you retire, you'll be in a lower, I'm just kidding. Lower bracket, right. Even though there may be less income coming in, you can see there's about $40,000 less coming in. It's not enough less to put them in a substantially lower bracket. Okay. So the IRS has this set up beautifully. So here's another case study. Okay. This is a couple who their assets are $2.9 million. Here are the 4 buckets. Here's all the different accounts that they have. The $1.2 million in taxable bucket. They had some cash, a joint account, etc. In the retirement bucket, they have some IRAs, an annuity, 401ks, etc. So $1.7 million in the tax deferred retirement bucket. The problem with this bucket is it's got a giant hole in it. When you open up your IRA 401k statement, any retirement account, if you look at that balance on that statement, don't get a false sense of security. Whatever that balance is, it's not all yours, because you have a debt that you have to pay to the IRS. We in our office, we call IRA, an IRA is an IOU to the IRS. Okay, so it's important, again, being proactive is, what is that debt going to be? Do we even know? So part 3 in our Thrive Retirement Roadmap review, we've done a Social Security analysis. We've done a future tax return. We have an idea of what bracket you're going to be in retirement. Now what we want to do is look at how much taxes are you going to pay over your lifetime. So over here on the left, this is that couple I mentioned earlier, $1.7 million in a retirement account. What if they do nothing? I call this the do nothing plan. Well, what's going to happen is if they don't do anything, they're going to be required to pull money out of their retirement account. Remember, it starts at 4% and it goes up every year. So doing that math, if they live to 90 years old, and if they earn a very conservative growth rate on their investments, 4%, I'm not looking at the growth of the 1.7 million. I'm only looking at the total taxes paid. If you do that math, they will pay $458,000 in total taxes over their lifetime. That should say taxes. Oops. Excuse me 1 second. There we go. My PowerPoint jumped ahead. So 448,000. The next taxes, most people think it's just one tax. The problem is there's actually three. So that's the first tax. Pull money out of the retirement, get taxed. You saw what their tax rate was, 22%. The next one is taxes on the reinvestments. I'm going to back up here, go back to my bucket. So most people aren't aware of this, but when you're withdrawing money out of your retirement bucket, you cannot go ahead. You cannot take money out of an IRA as a distribution and go and invest in a Roth IRA. You can only go backwards. So we pull money out here, we pay our taxable amount, whatever that tax bracket we're in, and then we go ahead and put it in this bucket. Savings account, another investment account, and it gets taxed again. It's a vicious cycle. Tax, etc. So the next tax is $182,000 again over their lifetime on the reinvestment of those distributions. Fortunately, this couple didn't need all of their retirement distributions, so they had to reinvest them. And so that's another tax on top of the 458. And then to add insult to injury, I explained the Secure Act before. When they're gone and money goes to the next generation, the children are going to be required to pull all of that money out and pay taxes at their rate. And so that's another tax on top of the first two. So you add up all the taxes in this example, a portfolio of 1.7 million, the total taxes paid if they do nothing is $945,000. It's crazy. Over here on the right is what if they do something about it? Now, I always like to tell people there's only two types of taxes. There's required taxes and there's optional taxes. The problem is, again, this is the do nothing plan. This is only required if you don't do anything, right? But if you're proactive over here on the right, we can reduce this. We can minimize this. Again, think of that mountain. We can look ahead and we can maneuver and steer around this, reduce the impact. Okay? What you can do are things like Roth conversions. And so in this example, we started to convert money from their retirement account over to a Roth IRA, into that fourth bucket that's tax-free. And in doing that, you can see the difference in total taxes paid. Okay, it's substantial. It's a lot of money. And who couldn't use a couple extra $100,000 in retirement, right? Again, there's enough risks. There's enough things we can't control in retirement. It's our job to do everything in our power to control what we can and to preserve and keep and pay as little as much as possible in taxes. Unfortunately, the only way you can do it is to be proactive and plan ahead. And so once you have money in that tax-free bucket, you never pay taxes again. Furthermore, you're never required to pull any distributions out like you are in a regular IRA or retirement account. So this couple did not need their retirement distributions. So they started converting them over to a Roth, and you can see all that money grows tax-free. In addition to that, it bypasses the Secure Act. The money in a Roth IRA or tax-free account, that when beneficiaries inherit that money, they're not obligated to pay any taxes either. So you can see it's a lot of taxes saved. So this is a jaw-dropping moment for most people who go through our analysis because they had no idea the impact of taxes. So again, this is step 3. If you want to know what is your tax liability, how much taxes are you going to pay on your retirement accounts, I would advise you, strongly encourage you to take advantage of the Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review. This is something we'll do for you. And there you can see the difference. So, conventional wisdom, we already talked about this, right? Work, save, don't pay the taxes. When you retire, you'll be in a lower bracket. When you invest in a retirement plan, you do 2 things. 1, you defer the taxes, and 2, you defer the tax calculation. Now think about that real slow. Imagine you need money for a house. So you go to the bank, and the bank says, "You want a mortgage? $300,000? No problem." And then you ask, "Well, how much interest am I going to have to pay?" And they say, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later." Who on earth would take that mortgage? The bank can decide later how much interest they want to charge you, right? Who would ever take that loan? No one. And that's exactly what we're doing in a retirement plan. If you think about it that way, you will realize how dangerous it is to throw caution to the wind when it comes to taxes and the importance of them in retirement. I cannot stress this enough. So many people I meet are unprepared for the impact of taxes in retirement. And you can see it's probably higher than you thought. So Lincoln Financial did a study a couple years ago, and this was 2018, on the underrated impact of taxes in retirement. So let me just pull that up for you. Excuse me, give me 1 second. Okay. So Lincoln Financial did a study. What's the total impact of taxes? So we're just talking about federal income taxes really today. That's all we would talk about so far. But Lincoln Financial did a study, and they said the total tax is closer to 32% when you factor in all of the other taxes. But there's so many taxes that aren't even on this, like Medicare surcharges, which is another tax if you make too much money in retirement. You know, probate, inheritance tax, estate tax, etc. So there's so many others that aren't on here. But this is an interesting article because they went on to survey retirees about a couple of things. So one of the things they asked retirees, what do you worry most about? Number 1 response was the health of my spouse, 75%. But right behind it, at 73%, taxes and the impact on my retirement savings. And the reason it's not the thought process that most people have when they're working is because it's not real. You know, it's down the road, it's imaginary, it's ahead, it's in the future. But these are retirees. These are the people who are actually witnessing and experiencing the impact of taxes because they're there. I can't tell you how many, 75 and 80-year-olds we meet that come to us and say, "Well, I thought I was going to be in a lower bracket. I can't believe I'm paying these taxes. What can you do?" And there's things that we can do, but obviously there's a lot more we could have done if we would have met them sooner. And again, that's why we're doing these workshops and webinars. But this article is interesting. If we scroll on to read the rest of it, this stands out. So this survey asked, what was the biggest surprise in retirement? Now, healthcare is rising at an astronomical pace. The last estimate I heard, it was over 8% per year. That's a lot of money. Taxes was the number 1 response as being the biggest surprise in retirement. Interesting. Then they went on to survey people and found this. One key finding is that many of the respondents did not maximize their tax planning opportunities. In fact, they displayed a surprising lack of knowledge on tax topics and now have a strong interest in learning more about tax planning and opportunities that may exist in Roth IRAs. Okay? Problem is, they're retired. They can still do some of this, But obviously we could have done a lot more while they were working or before they were retired or early in retirement, etc. And you got to love this one. They asked them, well, what did you do to reduce taxes? Number one response, nothing. Or they itemized, which most people can't do because of the changes that went into effect in 2017, which now most people are using the standard deduction, then itemizing. Or number three, they just gave their money away. None of these are good options for tax planning purposes. And most people that took this survey feel dissatisfied with their tax planning. So the lesson from this article was to examine, well, first I would say becoming aware of the sources of taxation. Think of those buckets, right? Those 4 buckets. Start to learn where your money lives. Again, we're going to do all this for you through our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review. But start examining the sources and how your money's going to get taxed. At what rate is it probably going to get taxed? And then you can start to figure out some of the cycles and strategies to start to break the cycle, okay? So coming back to our presentation. So this is an illustration of a couple who starts converting to a Roth IRA at around the age of 70. And you can see the value of an IRA is blue and the value of a Roth is green. And in here, you can see that this couple starts converting, okay? And then there's the annual distributions that they have to pull out of their IRA. It's very simple. You can see that the Roth IRA grows at a lot higher, a faster rate, not in terms of rate of return, but because of the impact of taxes. In the IRA, we have to distribute more and more money. So the value of the IRA goes down and down and down. But the value of the Roth goes up because there are no distributions. One of the things I tell every client is my goal for them is I want you to be in control of as many things that we can control, okay? I'm just here to guide them. They're still the captain of the ship. I'm just to educate, guide, etc. But this is a major advantage that most people can leverage, but most people just don't know about it or are unfamiliar with it. Or worse, their advisors aren't having these conversations, which is what I find to be true most of the time. So we talked about taxes. Now let's talk about where taxes are going. So most people feel that taxes are going up. I already discussed that the RMD rate increases every year. It starts at around 44% and it goes up. By age 90, it's close to 9% that you have to distribute. Okay. Number 3, it's the law. So when Trump got into office, well, my slide's not working. When Trump got into office, he passed his Tax Reform Act. And what he did is he lowered the rates. Let's see if I can fast forward to it. There we go. So in 2017, here's what the rates were at that time. There was a 10, 15, 25, 28, 33, 35, okay? But the rates were dropped. The 15 became the 12, the 25 became the 22, the 28 became the 24, and the 33 became 32, okay? That's great. The bad news is this is not a permanent change. This is temporary, and it's going to expire and revert back to these 2017 levels in 2026. So we have a window of opportunity that we can take advantage of to obviously save money. Now, who knows what the rates are going to be? And they're going to revert back to this, but who's to say they won't be higher, et cetera, okay? So that's important. Here's another big consideration. With all of the spending that's happening, stimulus, relief, et cetera, our national debt is exploding. I saw an article that referenced our national debt after the first round of COVID stimulus payments is expected to exceed $40 trillion. To put that into perspective, down here, you can see the relationship between our debt to our GDP. GDP is the gross domestic product. It's the sum of all the goods and products sold in the US. Our debt has never been higher than 58% in 2008. By 2024, it's expected to be almost 200% of our GDP. That's crazy. This is something, if you have money in a retirement account, what money has never been taxed? What money does the IRS have a legal claim to go after, right? And if you put yourself in the IRS shoes, they think they've given you a break. They think that you've never paid taxes on this money. So the average debt that's due to a taxpayer because of this debt is going to be $300,835. If you have any money in a retirement account, you need to start looking ahead, and you need to start, just like that Lincoln report said, figure out what you can do to start breaking the cycle. Because in my opinion, it's only going to get worse. Another important topic is taxes are at a historic low. Again, a golden opportunity to take advantage of. Most people have a short-term memory when it comes to finance and et cetera. Taxes were much higher. So history has a tendency to repeat itself. So I'd highly encourage you to start looking ahead and seeing what you can do to be proactive today. In our office, we have another saying. We either have tax planners or you can be a tax procrastinator. It's one or the other. There's really no other option. So this is a secret. This is Learned Hand. He was a retired Court of Appeals judge. This is his quote. In America, there's two tax systems, one for the informed and one for the uninformed, and both are legal. And that's what we try to stress to our clients and try to help them. What can you do? Let's go through the process. Let's go through all the analysis. Let's figure out where your money lives, what opportunities do you have, how is it all connected, and what can you do to put yourself in a better position for tomorrow. Okay, so if anybody has any retirement account, a 401k, a 403b, SEP IRA, simple IRA, TSA plan, if you work for the government, 457 plan, if you work for a city or municipality, those are company retirement plans. Okay, here's a slide to show the difference on some of the factors that you want to think about between a company plan versus an individual plan, an IRA, individual retirement account. I meet so many people that have money in group company plans, and either they stopped working or they're still working and they can move money up, but they don't know these options. Again, I always am an advocate of you being in control. If you remember the mountain, okay, what is a 401k, a 403b, any company retirement? It's not your plan. It's your company's retirement plan. You're just one of several employees that save into it, but it's not your plan. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's really just a savings plan. There's investments in there as opposed to cash, because we wouldn't want to invest in something for 20, 30 years and not have it make any money. So there's investments inside of it. Okay, but it's a very limited plan. You don't have control over those investments. It's pre-planned. When we do dinner workshops and we have a bunch of people, we can't have an open menu. We need to limit the menu. Can't have everybody just undecisive. We're on a timeline. We have an agenda. So we pick a chicken, a fish, and a steak. A 401k does the same thing for you because they can't open up the universe, every option that's out there. So they pick a growth mutual fund, a bond mutual fund, maybe an international mutual fund, maybe a real estate fund, a healthcare fund. So it's a very limited menu. As compared to an IRA, which is unlimited. You can buy any investment in an IRA, any stock, any mutual fund, any bond, annuity, you name it, any investment alternative product. So many options out there in an IRA. Okay, taxes, both of them work identically. Okay, both of them are tax deferred. However, in a 401k or a retirement plan, most tax planning, Roth conversions, and all the things that we talked about tonight are usually not allowed in a company plan. Again, they can't administer it, but you can do that in an IRA. There is no limit as to any amount that you want to convert in an IRA or Roth, etc. But you can't do any of that in a 401k plan. The investment options, very limited in a 401k, very limited menu like we talked about, unlimited in an IRA. Fees, 401ks have internal fees. There's compliance, record keeping, internal investment fees. You know, it varies greatly depending on the size of the company and the investments that are in the plan. But in an IRA, it can be zero, or it can be, again, depending on the investment that's in there. Okay, but the point is you're in control. You have no say over these fees on the left. And the last is that help, etc. Nobody can legally give advice on a 401k unless they're your advisor. Most 401ks don't have a financial advisor to, you know, construct plans. Somebody might be able to say, well, this fund did that X, you know, did X amount last year, etc. But nobody can kind of give you advice, etc. on what you should invest in and why. Okay. Lastly, you want to start asking your retirement plan some of these questions. Is there a Roth 401k, etc.? So it lives in that fourth bucket. You have that option available. Where do your matching contributions go if there is a Roth? Do they go in the Roth or do they go in the pre-tax? Do they have an in-service rollover option? Most people don't know when you reach the age of 55 or 59 and a half, is you can pull money out of a 401k, any kind of company plan, and move it to an IRA without any tax consequences. And usually no fees either. But again, it all depends on the plan. Some plans allow it and some don't. So again, moving on. For any of you that are working with CPAs, accountants, etc., I always ask clients, what are they telling you to do to reduce future taxes? Typically, it's not a conversation that most accountants have, because their job is to file the return based off of last year, right? They're looking at history. Very rarely do they look ahead. In fact, sometimes they add to the problems, because if they file your return and you say, well, what can I do to pay less taxes today? They might say, well, put money in an IRA. You get a tax write-off. But the problem is that's only making the future taxes worse, like we talked about, etc. Or if anybody has a financial advisor, what have they suggested? Most people, most financial advisors are not savvy and capable of talking about the impact of taxes. Most of them aren't even allowed. I supervise many financial advisors over my career, and there's a lot of firms that, you know, they are just investment companies and investment firms. They do not want their advisors talking about taxes, so they're not allowed. Okay, so because you attended our event, you qualify for our complimentary consultation. It consists of a couple main parts. So skip that part. So like I said, everything is connected. Because of the Social Security, the taxes, the investments, you can see that these are multiple, and most people have a tendency to look at them as separate things, but they're really connected, interconnected. So what we can do to help is to start, and you can do to help yourself, is to start educating yourself on your specifics, okay? Don't get stuck in the middle. Most financial advisors that people go to and they ask, what can I do about taxes? They say, well, talk to your CPA or your accountant. So you go to your accountant, CPA, and you say, what can I do to reduce my tax liability in my investments? And they say, oh, well, that's an investment. You need to go talk to your advisor. Don't get stuck in the middle. So as a result, for attending our webinar, you're entitled to our Thrive Retirement Roadmap Review. All your questions will be answered. It is a total holistic retirement and investment planning by fiduciaries. It's an awesome second opinion. If any of you do have advisors or any professional that you work with, remember, you can never get a second opinion from the person who gave you the first. So I would highly encourage you to take advantage of it. It's probably more sophisticated than any planning you've already received. We put about 10 to 15 hours of financial planning into your scenario, all again complimentary. It's at least a $2,500 value. Okay, and the reason why we do that is because we're specialists, we're not generalists. So we're happy to take the time to educate you because we're pretty confident that we can probably help you in some capacity. And if nothing else, give you some tips. Okay, so these are the main parts like we talked about. We're going to do a Social Security report. We're going to look ahead and do a future tax return. And we're going to look at the future tax liability that you may be exposed to. And we're also going to do an investment analysis. Again, we don't have time to go into that tonight. For other of you that want to have resources, okay, so we have a bestseller book on Amazon, Roadmap to Retirement. This is a book on what not to do in retirement, a lot of tips, etc. All the proceeds go to a nonprofit. And I highly encourage you to check out our radio show. We're on the Big Talker 1210 on Saturday and Sunday mornings. I think it's 6 a.m. and it's 1 p.m. now. So we have 2 shows. Again, all education, etc. So how to schedule your appointment. So I want to thank you for attending. If you'd like to schedule your Thrive, Roadmap to Retirement review, please click on the bar to your right, or you can click on www.meetthrive.com. Schedule your meeting. We have quite a few offices all around the area, or we can always meet virtually. So I want to thank you for attending. I appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully I accomplished my goal, which was maybe you learned at least one thing that you didn't know before you watched. So again, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing some of you. Have a great one.